right, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, July 17th, 2023, to order. If we can please ask everyone to please silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate, that would be great. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Eaton.
Here.
Commissioner Fournier.
Here.
Commissioner Moss.
Here.
Commissioner Perkins.
Here.
Vice Chairperson McGee.
Here.
Chair Harden.
Here, if I can ask us all to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, can I get a motion approving the CRA board meeting minutes of May 16th, 2023?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Can I get a motion approving the city and CRA board joint workshop minutes of May the 3rd, 2023?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Are there any changes to our agenda today, Mr. Tran?
There are no changes, Chairman.
Very good. Can I get a motion approving the agenda as printed?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Great. That takes us up to our consent agenda discussion. I have heard no one wanted item number 1 pulled. Is there anyone who wants to pull item number 1? Hearing none, very good. That takes care of our consent agenda. So item number 1 will be eligible for discussion during the audience to be heard portion, which takes us up to audience to be heard. Kervin, do we have anyone signed up for audience to be heard?
No, Mayor.
There are no speakers for audience to be heard. Very good. That takes us up to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion approving item number 1?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. That takes us up to our regular agenda. Item 2 is a presentation.
Presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2024 budgets and financing and implementation plans for fiscal year 2024 through 2028 for the East and Northwest CRA districts.
Very good. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Vasquez.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Board members. Kimberly Vasquez, Senior Project Manager for the CRA. The item before you today is the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget, as well as the 5-year districting and implementation plans for the East as well as the Northwest CRA districts. The budget as presented falls under the state statute Part 3 guidelines, as well as the initiatives under both the East and Northwest CRA plans. And with that, I'll start with the East budget. The East saw a total growth value based on estimated values for June of 10%, with the larger percentages being in
Excuse
residential.
me, Ms. Vasquez, if I could interrupt you for just a moment. I can't, my computer screen is only partially here. I'm not sure how to realign that. If you could just hang on for 1 second.
Sure.
I don't know how to do it. Sorry.
I think you just click in this space, give you bigger, and almost, and then it goes away. It just went away. Click it again.
It's still missing. Still missing the bottom. So it's not just me.
You said eventually goes away.
Well, mine did.
There it is.
Oh, okay. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Double click
Okay,
on
yeah,
like the
okay.
blue area, double click, get your cursor on the blue area, double click. Anywhere.
Yeah, Barry's doing touchscreen just like I tried. We all got the full screen? Beverly? Yes, okay. We'll let Kervin get back to his seat. Thank you, Kervin. Sorry about that. Yep, he's one last fix down there. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. You saw a total growth value of 10% in the ECRA, mainly through your residential and commercial uses. The overall budget just a snapshot. We're showing a total sources of $31,178,282. Of that is 5.5 in tax increment, which comes from your taxing authorities of city, county, and North Broward Hospital District. We do recognize building rental revenues of $121,000, and that's for 110, 119 South Federal Highway, as well as 23 Southeast 22nd Avenue. We do anticipate investment earnings of up to $50,000. And then we are forecasting to potentially issue a tax increment bond for the East CRA District at a little over $19 million. We do anticipate a carry forward fund balance of unexpended funds of a little over $6.2 million. And then our uses, our expenditures are in operations at $790,000. That includes us as staff, CRA staff. We have a city cost allocation where we pay for services from the city, as well as our general operating expenses. We do have debt service for your 2013 A and B bond issuance that was done, as well as we're incorporating some bond issuance money if we do go for the FY 2024 bond at a little over $1.2 million. Redevelopment projects is where the majority of your allocation of funding is going to at $29.1 million. And I would just like to state the tax increment revenue bond will not be appropriated until we actually issue the bond and bring it into our budget. We're just projecting it in our budget for this year. Infrastructure and streetscape improvements is where the majority of your funding is going, and this is really for the McNabb House and Restoration Project as well as your botanical gardens. We're showing tax increment revenue of $1.2 million, in other words, new revenue coming in. We're showing the tax increment revenue bond of $15 million, and we do have a carry forward fund balance of unexpended funds of $6.2 million. The McNabb House and Garden projects is projected with botanical garden aspect to be a little over $22 million. With the tax increment revenue that we're anticipating this year, as well as the carry forward fund balance, we are anticipating that we will have enough to do phase one construction of the project, which incorporates the house, garage, and that area of the site plan. Redevelopment initiatives, you see tax increment revenue of $250,000. And that's $200,000 allocated to our incentive programs, which is our facade, our strategic investment program grants that we give for property improvement. And then you'll see here dissemination of information, which is where we do our ribbon cuttings, where we disseminate information through social media or other aspects about business openings, and then our CRA projects and the CRA area in general. Housing and neighborhood stabilization, we do show tax increment revenue of $150,000, and that's going to your security or our redevelopment ambassadors. Property acquisition, you do see tax increment revenue bond of $4 million, which we're anticipating, as stated, to issue potentially an FY 2024 budget, and then tax increment revenue of $1.8 million for property acquisition. Consultants and professional services, you see tax increment revenue of $350,000, and then our expenditures for consultants and professional services of $345,000, as well as professional fees for an investment advisor. That concludes the East presentation budget, and the East Advisory Committee did review this at their July 3rd meeting and did recommend approval of the budget with no changes to be presented today to you as the CRA board. The Northwest CRA budget. The budget snapshot is total sources of $35 million, which tax increment is $6.9 million, and that's city TIF only. We do have interlocal project funding of $1.5 million. We do have miscellaneous revenue expenses, which includes our microloan enterprise repayments, building rental revenues, and investment earnings. And we do get rental revenues from 731 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, as well as 35 North Dixie Highway. Our operations are at $1.1 million. Once again, includes us as staff, a city cost allocation and general operating expenses, and we do have debt service at 1.6. That includes your FY 2022 bond issuance debt service, as well as a loan that's being paid back to the city for 790 800 Hammondville Road. And you see, once again, the majority of your project funding is going to redevelopment projects at $32 million. And most of that is recognized in carry forward. We did see 11% growth in the Northwest, with 15% of that being in your residential and 10% being in industrial use, based off the estimate for the FY 2024 June property values. The infrastructure and streetscape initiatives is the majority of the funding, and I'll just go through them. Tax increment revenue at $1 million. We have the intergovernmental funding. That's your agreement with the other taxing authorities, where we'll get $1.5 million in FY 2024. Carry forward fund balance of $16.8 million. We have our bond series interest earnings and carry forward of $741,000. And then we have the taxing authority interlocal carry forward of $7.7 million. The taxing authority interlocal carry forward can only be allocated to the projects that are specified within that interlocal agreement. Our funding sources are $3 million to the downtown district drainage at $3 million, and that's a carry forward. Downtown district infrastructure of $2.8 million, also carry forward. We have Collier City Gateway feature of $241,000. That's also carry forward of unexpended funds. And then we have Sonata Development infrastructure improvements of $300,000. That's the development agreement we have with them, where we're paying $1.5 million as part of that project on Dixie Highway. And this will be done in 3 more years. We're into year 2 of that. 11 Northeast 1st Street, or the old wash house, that's a carry forward of $700,000. You see Dixie Highway Atlantic Boulevard, that's unexpended funds as well as interest earnings for that project. And then we have the taxing authorities interlocal of $9.2 million. We have $3.3 million for downtown infrastructure, $2.9 million MLK Gateway, and then we're holding $3 million in reserve. That would be 1.5 carry forward as well as 1.5 new funding coming in. And we're reserving those for the approved projects. Infrastructure and streetscape improvements, a little over $3 million. That's for Northwest 6th Avenue beautification improvements. And then you see public parking and capital improvements at $7.7 million. That is an anticipated public parking area over in Old Town. Vertical project development, you see tax increment revenue of $478,000, and then building rentals, that's the rent revenue that we get of $81,000, and that's being expended to tenant improvements at $100,000. We do have maintenance that we do for $250,000, and then you see rentals and leases. Those are what we pay for other properties at $210,000. Redevelopment initiatives is tax increment revenue at $560,000, and micro enterprise loan program as your revenue sources. The allocation are for expenditures to incentive programs at $400,000, and then once again dissemination of information at $175,000. Area stabilization is really our redevelopment ambassadors. You do see a tax increment revenue of $465,000, and you see an allocation of funding of $345,000 for the ambassadors or security. We do put in funding for additional security and safety of $100,000, and then we keep emergency rehab of housing stock funding in there at $20,000. Public space and public property improvements, you see tax increment revenue at $50,000, and our expenditure is to the community garden. That's for our operator, as well as utilities, portalet, and electrical uses. And then once again, funding for property acquisition, which is tax increment coming in of $1.2 million, and then also a carry forward fund balance of $2.1 million. You see property maintenance and special services at $387,000, and then property acquisition of a little over $3 million. Once again, we also have consultants and professional services within the Northwest. We do have tax increment revenue allocated for this of $410,000. You do see for demolition services of $10,000, and then consultants at $400,000, and that also includes our investment advisor for that. That concludes the presentation for the Northwest CRA budget. The Northwest Advisory Committee did review this at their July 10th meeting, and they also recommended approval as presented to you with no changes today. The final draft, this is the final draft as today for the CRA board, and then the final budget will come to you September 19th, where it will be amended in the final budget. We do anticipate that we may have some spend downs in carry forward or unexpended funding that may hit before the end of the fiscal year, and probably an adjustment to our property values as well. That concludes my presentation on the budget, and I'll take any questions you have at this time.
Very good, thank you for that. And so, yeah, just to be clear, we'll actually be adopting the budget in September at our September meeting, correct?
That is correct.
So between now and then, we've got ample opportunities to get with staff and go over things. But yeah, let's open it. Well, this is a public meeting. Is there any input from the public at this point in time? Seeing none, public input closed. I'll open it up. Commission discussion, questions, concerns, anyone? Commissioner Fournier?
I have a couple questions. First, in the Northwest CRA, the $3 million for downtown drainage, there were big differences in the developers and what their plan was for drainage. How do we think about spending that money? Is it to design drainage, and how do we do that before we have a partner developer?
We've always anticipated, and I believe it's also written in the ITN, that the CRE will contribute $3 million to those design services. We anticipated it's going to be more than that, but we were contributing the $3 million.
Okay, so we're allocating that, but it might not actually be spent until we have a partner on board.
That is correct, but
Okay.
we do hold it in our budget.
Got it. And then, for me, the elephant in the room in all of this is the East CRA and that bond issuance. I guess implied in that is an extension of the East CRA, which is scheduled to sunset in 2031. So I just think that's a big consideration that we have. If we're going to extend the East CRA by another 10 years for the botanical gardens, it's something we need to think about. If there's other ways to, I guess, achieve the gardens, it's a lot of debt to put on my kids, all of our kids. So all good things must come to an end. The East CRA has been a great success, so I just think we need to think long and hard about whether we take on that bond issuance. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. Further commission questions, concerns? Commissioner Perkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you tell me how much money was allocated again for the Dixie Highway and Atlantic Boulevard from the Northwest CRA?
There was a total of $17.2 million, $250,000 allocated to that project out of the CRA budget.
And that was from the Northwest?
Yes, $15 million of that was bond. The other remaining was out of the interlocal agreement project funding, as that was one of the specified projects as part of that agreement.
Okay. And you also mentioned the additional security. What area does security cover in the Northwest?
The security currently covers the MLK corridor as well as the CRA vacant properties around MLK, generally a block to the south and a block to the north, goes out to the Interpass, and then over in the Old Town area. That is where they currently go, that's where they do their route. The additional security that you're seeing in there for the $100,000, we really contribute that towards lifetime cameras.
Okay. And can you, before September, can you give me a breakdown of the, I think it was $400,000, I think you said, for the consultants? For
Yes.
the Northwest? Can you give me a breakdown on that separately?
Yes.
On that? And also, we have the, I think you mentioned $3 million for the MLK Gateway? You said?
Yes.
So is that on Dixie and Martin Luther King?
Yes, it's the property just to the north, the northwest.
In front of
Yeah,
Saxon
the
Wall?
vacant property.
Okay, so the 3 million is going to be what? What is going to be there?
Don't think it's determined at this time. It's always been referred to as the gateway site. But as part of that interlocal agreement that we have with the taxing authorities, it is recognized as an approved project, and that's the funding that we're allocating towards that. It could be for infrastructure or streetscape type improvements around that particular property.
But you should have something in mind if you're putting aside 3 million for that. So there's nothing you have in mind to put in that, on that particular lot. But 3 million is set aside for whatever you,
I can answer that. If you look at that site, at the Gateway site, it is full of spaghetti overhead wires there coming down from the FP&L transfer station up that way. So as part of that could be undergrounding those overhead wires.
well, my question is, because you're calling it the Gateway, I'm just trying to understand, do you plan to put apartments or something like that there in the future? A building as a gateway? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what.
As part of the ITN and the master developer, that property was offered up into the downtown development. So anything going in there, we did set aside some money there because we did own that property for infrastructure improvements.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, just give me the breakdown of the consultants. And, you know, I see a lot of the Northwest CRA funding. Very little is going to Collier City. Very little is going to the Northwest, but the majority of it seems to be going to Dixie Highway and the downtown area. So,
There is no new allocation of funding to Dixie in this budget. We did last year, you are correct, but we don't have any new allocation of funding for that project.
okay. Now, last year, what was the funding for Dixie and Atlantic? Was it,
17.2 million,
okay, I thought it was 14. You said 17.2.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. Further commission questions, concerns, highlights? Seeing none? Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. All right. That takes us up to item 3 as a resolution.
A resolution of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency authorizing the CRA Executive Director to request the City of Pompano Beach dual name Pier Street West between Riverside Drive and Ocean Boulevard, Doxwell Drive, and authorize a plaque and dedication ceremony in honor of Barry Doxwell, providing an effective date.
So moved.
Moved and second for discussion. Good afternoon, Ms. Mulder.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Mulder, Project Manager for the CRA. So during the CRA board meeting in July of last year, Jack Rogerson, Chair of the East CRA Advisory Committee, requested the CRA board honor former City of Pompano Beach Commissioner Barry Doxwell by naming something after him in the fishing village, Mr. Rogerson spoke of the work and dedication of Mr. Doxwell that was instrumental in the redevelopment of the beach. A motion was made by Board Member Eaton that Mr. Doxwell be honored by naming something after him in the fishing village, and that motion carried a unanimous vote. During our last ECRA Advisory Committee meeting in May, Mr. Rogerson made a motion to dual name the western portion of Pierce Street to Doxwell Drive, which you'll see here in this presentation. That motion also carried a unanimous vote. This item authorizes the CRA Executive Director to request the City of Pompano Beach dual name the western portion of Pierce Street between Riverside Drive and Ocean Boulevard, Doxwell Drive, and authorize a plaque and dedication ceremony in honor of Barry Doxwell. This item will be brought forward by Robert McCon at the July 25th City Commission meeting for consideration as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that. This is a public hearing. Is there any input from the public on this item? Seeing none, public input closed. Commission discussion. Questions? Vice Mayor McGee.
I had a thought process on this, and I spoke with staff and city manager, that opposed to dual naming and breaking up Pier Street, possibly naming the garage itself after Commissioner Doxwell, seeing how the garage was something that he helped fight to get there on the beach, and was really the linchpin into what allowed us to build the fishing village as to what it is. So I'd like to bring a motion to instead of doing the street naming, to name the garage itself after him.
Okay, that's a motion to name instead of the street, to name the garage after Commissioner Doxwell. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Eaton. Commissioner Eaton?
Yes, so I think at one point, were we not talking about the Doxwell docks, where we have the water taxi on the park? I remember that was brought up. So I'm confused really as whether that's going to happen along Pierce Street, or whether it's an either or. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I know the vote to name something, which I think is a great honor for him, has been different items, street, I think the water taxi stand at one point, or the garage. And to me, it's just, the project, as a project, he was so instrumental in getting through, so it just seemed more apropos in my mind, but.
Well, I certainly agree that it would be nice to have something to honor him. I just hope he's happy. I just want him to be happy with whatever it is. I don't know, has anyone had any discussions prior to, or is this sort of an out of the blue?
I haven't spoken with him directly, no.
That's,
You have or have not?
Have not.
Okay.
yeah, but I believe, did the ECR Advisory Committee, they discussed it and they asked us to move forward with naming of Doxwell Drive, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was there any discussion at that level about any other naming opportunities that they considered?
They mentioned it, but this was their recommendation, was to name the western portion of Pierce Street. I think prior, to the meeting before, there wasn't a solid recommendation of what to name up until this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that information. So, yeah. So it sounds like they considered things, but they kind of zeroed in on this. But that's the East Advisory Committee. So, Commissioner Eaton, do you still have the floor?
Well, I'm just, I haven't reviewed, are there, the minutes, are they in the backup? Because I haven't had a chance to review what the actual discussion has been. I mean, and yet, I do want to name, I do think it's appropriate. I just want to make sure everybody's,
Sure.
that he's on board. So that's just where I'm coming from right now.
Very good. Commissioner Moss?
I think it's a good idea to name one thing or the other thing for him. Maybe we should consult him to see which he would prefer
Yeah, if that's a doable thing.
before we move forward on it. I mean, he certainly deserves the honor.
Commissioner Moss, you are wise beyond your years.
I've got a lot of years.
Okay, further commission discussion on the motion, because there's a motion on the floor to name the.
Could I modify the motion to follow?
Oh, well, it's been seconded by Commissioner Eden. If she'll agree to that, that'll be fine.
To modify it to the wise counsel of Commissioner Moss, and have staff reach out to Commissioner Doxwell and see what he feels.
Well, how about this? I mean, if it's the wish of this board that we actually consult with former Commissioner Doxwell, which I think is a great idea, perhaps we ought to just not make any motions and just table this item until our next meeting and ask staff to go and talk to Commissioner Doxwell, and maybe we can all reach out to, I mean, heck, I've got him on my cell phone. I mean, I'm not going to put him on speaker here, but we can kind of reach out that way. So that might be my suggestion, rather than trying to do.
I'll withdraw the motion in lieu of tabling, and so we can reach out until our next meeting, so we can reach out and fill the waters.
There you go. You're wise beyond your years. Okay.
What do we do if he wants both?
No, that's not an option.
Mayor?
You get an either or.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yeah, I think Mr. Doxwell is so deserving of this. I just need some clarification that naming whatever after him will come out of the funding for the ECRA. Is that the way it works? The funding for...
I think that would be, it would probably be, any funding necessary would probably come from the city.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, because, we have in place that when something is named, the family or the community or whatever has to come up with, the new amount, which is 1,000, to name something after a person in the city. So I was just wondering if the money came from the the ECRA, or if it's going to be presented to you a different way. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to keep.
the city actually is the one that names things, not the CRA. So it would involve city funding, not CRA funding. The CRA, all this item is about is us making a recommendation to the city. The city is the entity that actually names anything. So it would be up to the city to figure out the funding source. It would not be the CRA.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Very good. I believe I'm correct in that. Ms. Mulder, is that?
Yes, you are
I
correct.
understand.
Thank you.
And if I may, so Mr. Fred Stacer, who sits on the advisory committee, did speak to Barry about this. He was happy. So do you want me to ask him if he would prefer between the garage, the street? Okay.
That would be great. Very good. Okay, it's been moved to table, moved to table by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Eden. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. All right, takes care of item 3. Now let's move on to item 4 as a resolution.
A resolution of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the proper officials to execute a contract for sale and purchase between the CRA and Carver Ranch Homes LLC for the property at 324 Northwest 5th Street, Pompano Beach, in the amount of $125,000, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and second for discussion. Good afternoon, Ms. Lamassier.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Board members. Cassandra Lamassurier, CRA Real Property Manager. Staff is seeking approval from the CRA Board for the purchase of property located at 324 Northwest 5th Street. The property is located directly east of 330 Northwest 5th Street, purchased by the CRA in October of 2020, and it will be part of an assembly on this block consisting of 13 other parcels that are already owned by the CRA. The property that's already owned by the CRA, and it was included in your backup memo, is shown in red on the aerial that I have up. The city property, which is the Ally Building, is shown in blue, and then the property for purchase is the vacant lot that is shown in yellow with the call out. Over 20 years ago, the CRA initiated planning and development of a new downtown. And to make this plan come to fruition, the CRA began acquiring property in this area to create an assemblage of properties for redevelopment. Additionally, zoning and land use regulations were passed to create the downtown Pompano Overlay District. While the CRA has acquired some property in this area, not all property has been made available for purchase. The property owner, Carver Ranch Homes LLC, approached the CRA with an offer to sell their property to the CRA. It is a 6,750 square foot vacant lot, zone TO transit oriented within the downtown Pompano Overlay District. It is in the core sub area with a use designation of mixed use residential and a density designation of residential required 36 to 80 dwelling units per acre and a maximum allowed height of 105 feet. The CRA purchase price of $125,000 is approximately $18.50 per square foot, which is at or below the surrounding market values for comparable sales. And the 2023 BCPA value is $81,000. Purchase of this property would obviously add to our assemblage for future redevelopment of that block. The Northwest CRA Advisory Committee reviewed the request at their June 10th meeting and recommended approval of 5-0, and staff also recommends approval of this contract to purchase the property. I'm available for any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that. This is a public hearing. Is there any input from the public on this item? Seeing none, public input closed. Commission discussion. Questions, concerns? Commissioner Fournier?
I have a couple questions. Thank you, Mayor. So this property sold in 2022, so about a year and a half ago.
Correct.
For, it looks like $70,000.
Yes.
How do we get ourselves inserted into those transactions so we don't end up paying a premium for these things a year later?
So that sale, when it sold prior for that amount, was an off-market sale. So that's something where they would have had to have approached the prior owner. And we do approach property owners that are not listed repeatedly to try to add to our assembly, but we're not always successful in being able to negotiate contracts for purchase. As you know, we typically purchase at an appraised price, a sales comp price per square foot, or a BCPA value. And with what's happened with COVID, with market increases, we're not always able to compete with the private market that can overpay for properties. We're always conscious that we're using taxpayer money to purchase properties, so we always negotiate something that we feel would be a reasonable purchase price.
One quick question also. The one parcel in between all of the red on that block that is not owned?
Yes, that's owned by Mario Lopez. Staff's been in contact with him over the past 4 years repeatedly in an attempt to purchase that property and will continue to do so as it does complete the assemblage that would be required to redevelop that block.
Thank you. What is the plan for this block? Do you have?
There is no current plan. As with other property owned by the CRA, this was included in the invitation to negotiate, so the final development may be dependent upon the negotiated master development agreement with the selected master developer.
Thank you.
Very good. For the commission, questions, concerns? Commissioner Perkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the, forgive me, I haven't had really a chance to look at the backup. Is this on the west side of Bethlehem Church?
Correct. This would be the parcel that abuts a portion of their parking lot, the north portion of the parking lot.
Okay, and the two parcels behind that, you're saying that we own that as well?
The
Red?
two parcels that are west of the yellow parcel?
Yes.
Yes, the one that's directly west, we purchased from the Goodrum in October of 2020. And then the other property west of that purchase, I believe, predated my time as real property manager with the CRA.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. When we purchase property like this, or we own property like this, what concerns me is that when you come to us, there is no plan. But the plan has been all over the Northwest to just build apartments. So I just find, so in other words, how do you put this out there to say, okay, we own this property, who wants to build on it? Is that how you go about it?
Well, in this specific case, it was included in the invitation to negotiate to select a master developer for the downtown. All of the property that was within the downtown Pompano overlay district that was owned by the CRA that did not have an existing development agreement or did not have approval to negotiate a development agreement was included in the ITN. To better answer your question, we know there's going to be a residential component to this because the density designation is a required residential. It's more a matter of what you would end up seeing with regard to unit counts, unit sizes, if there would be commercial that would be proposed because it has that mixed-use residential designation. Mm-hmm. And so the downtown Pompano overlay district is a little bit of a different animal than your typical like RM12 or B3 zoning, to where it has flexibility and it was done intentionally, but it does set standards for whether or not there has to be a residential component, whether or not it allows for a commercial component. And so those regulating plans for the DPOD will help set what can be developed on each of these pads.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Further commission discussion, questions, concerns? Seeing none, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Eaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
No.
Vice Chair McGee,
Yes.
Mayor Harden.
Yes, takes us up to item number 5 is a resolution.
A resolution of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the proper officials to execute a contract for sale and purchase between the CRA and Merlanda and Oriole Emmanuel for the property at 1570 Northwest 15th Way, Pompano Beach, in the amount of $150,000, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for discussion. Once again, Ms. Lamassier.
Good afternoon, Cassandra Lamaseria, your real property manager. Staff is seeking approval from the CRA board for the purchase of property located at 1570 Northwest 15th Way in the amount of $150,000. The property is located in the Coral Highlands neighborhood, directly north of Markham Elementary School and west of North Andrews Avenue. This property would be part of an assembly in this neighborhood consisting of 4 other parcels owned by the CRA. The property already owned by the CRA is outlined in red in the aerial that was also included in your backup. The property for purchase is outlined in yellow. The property is a 10,725 square foot vacant lot zoned RM12 And similar to other lots in this neighborhood where the property is located, it is not developable at this time because legal access to those lots has not been granted by adjacent property owners through right-of-way dedications for the development of public roads and public water and sewer utilities. The current roads that you see are actually dirt paths that require the property owners to trespass across others' lots. And this neighborhood has also had issues with illegal dumping and absentee owners who have purchased the property at tax deed auction. It's the CRA's intent to purchase this property in an effort to help stabilize the neighborhood and eventually improve this area. The prior properties that the CRA has did have illegal dumping, invasive species, and the CRA did pay to have those cleaned up, and it really did help transform the neighborhood. We have not seen any additional illegal dumping since the CRA took that action. It's the CRA's, the purchase price of $150,000 is approximately $14 per square foot, which again is at or below the surrounding comparable sales prices. The BCPA 2023 market value is $108,900, and the purchase of the property would add to our assemblage in this neighborhood for future redevelopment. The Northwest CRA Advisory considered this item at their July 10th meeting and recommended approval with a vote of 5-0, and staff also recommends approval of this contract for the purchase of the property.
Very
Available for any questions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Is there any input from the public on this item? Seeing none, public input closed. Commission discussion, questions, concerns. Commissioner Moss.
The property to the east that says property for purchase, is that on the market right now?
So that call out is actually pointing back over to the property outlined in yellow owned by the Emanuels. The property to the east of that abuts Andrews Avenue, does actually have access to public right-of-way, and it went through the platting process as Gigi's plat and site plan approval for what they're calling 24 garden apartments. It was at this point that planning and zoning staff, as well as the city engineer and utilities, realized it was key to be able to set what the right-of-way requirements would be so that the appropriate right-of-way was dedicated by that eastern property to not further landlock the western lots. Quite some time ago, a code amendment was done specific to this neighborhood to allow for a 30-foot right-of-way instead of a required 50-foot right-of-way that you would normally see. Because of studies done by a consultant, it was determined there was no way to be able to accommodate a 50-foot right-of-way. Both the utilities, fire, and engineering confirmed that the 30-foot right-of-way would be able to provide access and accommodate the future public utilities that could go in this area. They're currently on septic, and there's a 1-inch private water supply line that we have no record of where that line is because it runs across private property. So our hope is that we can continue to assemble property in this area, obtain the required right-of-way dedications, that the city has engaged a consultant that they'll be working on that as well, so that we can put true roads and infrastructure in this neighborhood.
So that property to the east, that came before us for townhome development, right?
Yeah, they call them garden apartments, but in essence, townhomes.
Not too long ago, right?
Correct. Within the
remember.
past, I believe, 6 months, most likely.
Yeah, okay. Very good, thanks.
Very good. Further commission discussion, questions? Commissioner Perkins.
So what you want to build on this property, you said are townhomes, apartments?
Well, the property that's the vacant lot east that abuts Andrews Avenue that's privately owned, they are putting 24 garden apartments in there. Really, I would think that it's too early to anticipate what would end up being developed on the CRA's property because it depends on how large our assembly is, whether or not it would be appropriate to do a single-family home subdivision versus something in the multifamily. You do have 5 existing single-family homes out there, but you also now will have the garden apartments coming in, so you're going to have both single-family and multifamily in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm trying to figure in my mind, where is this located from? I think it says north of.
It's directly north of
School.
Markham Elementary School, so on the south part of that aerial, that's actually Markham Elementary.
Is that
you
the
see.
bottom area here on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I think we're so busy trying to put up apartments, townhouses, but I think we need to consider the school, because in front of Markham is industrial. And now behind and on the side of Markham, now we want to place with all these CRA properties, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be either apartments, which is more gentrification, apartments, townhomes, townhouses, whatever you wanna call them, I call them apartments. So in my district, as I have stated, I have 11 in the Northwest. I have 11 new units coming up in District 4, and you're adding to it today. With that, I only have one so far development that is single-family home.
Yes, ma'am, the Hunter's Manor
And I think that's
subdivision.
Hunter's Manor with the 59 homes. I'm all for single-family homes, but I just feel like you all are doing a really good job when you say changing the face of a community with apartments, townhomes, whatever you call it. That's just all we're doing in the Northwest right now. But we're steady building the downtown. But in the Northwest, we're steady putting up apartments. We're making a lot of owners rich, and they go away, and we're left with, like I said, gentrification. You move out what's there, because the people that live in the Northwest can't afford these apartments that you're bringing in, because most of them are market rate. And I know we in the city trying to do something where we can average it out where people can afford to move in them. But I'm not saying this is just Pompano, it's happening everywhere. But it's just so sad that every time we meet, we're talking about the CRA owning this property, and a lot of times you don't have any plans, but in a few months you come back with townhouses and condos. Now, the community is not happy about it. I don't have the votes on the dais. Of course, I'm gonna vote no, they're gonna vote yes. Always yes, because the Northwest has the most land. So developers from all over the world is looking at Northwest Pompano. If you want to build some apartments, go to Pompano Beach, Northwest community, and you can build them. So we're just not taking into consideration of doing anything with these properties, in my opinion, but placing apartments in townhomes. So I would really love to see more single-family homes, if possible.
Understood.
Thank you.
Very good. Just out of curiosity, if you know, in the city of Pompano Beach, do you know of any single-family home, attached single-family home development?
Other than the new projects coming in?
New.
The only one to my knowledge is the Hunter's Manor subdivision that is going in on the CRA property.
And Habitat for Humanity?
Habitat for Humanity, Rick and Rita Case project that's still under construction on Northwest 6th Ave and Northwest 15th Street.
So those are the only two that comes to mind of single-family, detached single-family home
No,
projects
subdivision.
being created?
I know of one other. The Pompano Beach Housing Authority on Northwest 6th Avenue, they plan to build some single-family homes on one side of 6th Avenue, and on the opposite side, I think they plan to do duplexes.
By Canal Point.
Yeah, I think that's their plan. Those are their plans.
Okay. Mr. Tran?
Yes, I believe over there by Woody Portier's house on 9th Street, I think they're doing single family there.
Okay. So we've got Rick Case, Habitat, we've got Hunter's Manor, we've got Housing Authority, and we've got another project right around the corner from Woody's house, which is detached single-family home. That's, yeah, Commissioner Eaton?
The ones we just approved, I want to say Horton, Norton.
Yes, D.R. Horton that's
D.R.
doing the
Horton.
Hunter's Manor project.
Okay, that's the same one.
Yeah, north of Hunter's Manor Park.
Hunter's Manor, yeah. Commissioner Fournier, you had?
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask some questions.
Well, I'm doing my poll. I'm just trying to find out where we have single-family, detached.
I don't have any in my
single-family
district.
home. Commissioner Vice Mayor?
It's not detached, but aren't the 11 townhomes that are going up, those are all for sale townhomes, so they're not detached, but they're not rentals.
Okay, well, that's okay. So it sounds like that of the single-family home projects, the bulk of them, though, are in District 4.
They are. That's where the land
Okay.
was available. It's really hard throughout South Florida for developers to find any land that's large enough to accommodate new single-family home subdivisions.
Right, because I know that over across from the post office, the Morea building, that was apartments. Right just north of the old Crayers funeral home, the Celeste on Federal Highway, that's apartments. There's a lot of apartments Yeah, Mela, that's right, further east on Atlantic Boulevard.
City Center Mall, the.
City Center,
The
cinema
right,
property.
the mall property, that's apartments, so yeah, we've got apartments all over.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. It sounds good, but I would love to see a lot more detached, single-family homes in the Northwest.
Sure.
Okay? They're just not enough. I mean, with all of the land, the vacant land that we have, I would love to see a lot of this vacant land with single-family homes. So we can compare and say what you're saying, Mayor, it sounds good, but I would love to see, my community would love to see, on a lot of the CRA property, more single-family homes. I don't think we can ever have enough of those. But we do have more than enough right now, apartment, townhouses, or whatever, but yeah, we do have enough of those.
Very good. I was just kind of curious about the poll, that's all. First, I've got Commissioner Fournier.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear the same thing from my residents, that just apartments everywhere. The beach gets at least some condos and some ownership opportunities and luxury condos, but my district is full of apartments also. So I feel for you. And to me, this does look like a kind of the blueprint for a single-family neighborhood. There are already single-family homes there. Can you tell me how, it's very disjointed though, so how is acquiring this one little property there going to help us get where we want to be here? Are the other single-family homes on this dirt road willing to dedicate right-of-way at a certain point? Or are there a bunch that are not willing to work with us? So if you said, we buy this one and the rest of them are ready to go, then it makes sense. How far are we from that?
So the city hired a consultant, WGI, that is in the process of doing the legal sketches for the areas that would be required for right-of-way in this neighborhood, as well as one other landlocked neighborhood north of Northwest 15th Street, west of the mosque, west of Markham Elementary. So once they have all of that done, then they will be scheduling a neighborhood meeting for all of those owners to come in. Our hope with this is that the more that the CRA can acquire, we now have site control, we can do the required right-of-way dedications. But as it stands, and we'll continue for the vacant lots that are out there and other properties, if they're willing to sell, to try to continue to negotiate for purchase so that we have a meaningful, cohesive assembly. The property that is directly north of the yellow property for purchase, not only do they own that home, but they own the lot north of that. So by extension, they consider that to be their yard. The Kings own the home that's south of that lot. The property that's in the southwest corner, south of what's owned by the CRA, is owned by Mr. Henley, and he also owns the lot east of that. That's a rental property. And then the property north of the CRA, Iman Morgan and her husband own that. That's single-family homeowner occupied. And then the home to the north, my understanding is it's currently vacant. There are code compliance cases for significant work that was done without the required building permits. So out of the homes that you see there, there are 3 of them that are homesteaded, 1 of them that's a rental, and 1 of them that's vacant.
Thank you. It strikes me that if we go in here and dedicate right-of-way and improve the infrastructure, that will add value for these existing homeowners also.
Absolutely, and not only that, it replaces your dirt road with a paved road. It replaces a 1-inch water supply line that's really undersized for residential service with public utilities that run through the right-of-way and cross other people's privately owned property, and then most importantly also gets them off of septic service so that they're on the city's sewer service.
Okay, so if we are able to achieve this infrastructure and say that this lot can be developed at that point, can a single-family home go on this lot? I don't, what was it zoned? I didn't.
It's zoned RM12, which is residential multifamily 12 dwelling units per acre, but there's nothing that precludes a single-family home from going into an RM12 zoning district.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. I've got Vice Mayor McGee, then Commissioner Eden.
No, I just wanted to comment that I agree with Commissioner Perkins that it'd be, if we can get more ownership opportunities in whatever structure that fits the thing, that would be ideal, I think, especially to combat what's happened in the market, being that individuals and real estate investment trusts have picked up so many of the smaller single-family homes and operate them as rentals. As Commissioner Eden has pointed out a couple times, the percentage of her district that is operated as such, it really changes the whole landscape of the district and the availability of single-family homes. And so I think what we did, if we can encourage something, not just this property, but in general, where, like the townhomes, where we put in the rental restrictions, that they weren't to dissuade selling to investors, to encourage selling to owner users, because right now, first-time home buyers, smaller starter families, trying to find two-bedroom or three-bedroom homes that are small, little starter homes, is so difficult between the Airbnbs and the investors that picked them all up during the last downfall. Plus, then compounded with the fact for developers that the banks don't want to fund certain projects. The banks want to fund apartments because they're seeing that as the more guaranteed return. So there's a lot of things to combat, but I do think it's well worth our effort to at least attempt to bring in more home ownership opportunities for the actual users, so where it doesn't go investor. So that's just all I wanted to comment on that.
Very good. Commissioner Eden?
Thank you, Mayor. So, as well, this area and the area to the west of the elementary school is another area where people have just built on when they did it 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. I'd venture to say that without access today, it would be hard-pressed to get a permit to build any single-family resident there, as it stands. And so, yes, and so the idea behind this is said this is something that's been going on for maybe 3-4 years now, as we have been there, and reducing the roadway requirement from 50 to 30 enable us to make plans so that we took less in the right of way, less of people's lands, and they really have a choice. If they want a lot that is usable and sellable or buildable, you have to have a roadway, and you need to have city services, sewer most especially, because there's no more septic to sewer. We're trying to get rid of that. And we got a big grant to do just that recently. So I do have a lot of apartments going up in my district as well. And the old Ford dealership on Federal Highway, that is Zone B3. And I'm asked all the time, what's happening with Ford? I'm like, I don't know. That is a privately held property. And by right, that property has the right to build apartments. And there's nothing the city can say or do about it. The property to the east is Zone RM12. Residential, 12 units per acre. So they have that right, and I think it's worth just noting and just making it very clear that the CRA cannot stop someone, has no right to stop someone if they have that buildability, that availability to build. If they're zoned for it, that's theirs by right, by law, and we cannot take that away from them. And now with why we're trying to redevelop our corridors, the counties, we have our overlay district, B3s now can receive residential property because they're really a very, very little use as business properties. So, yeah, I wish I had nice townhouses going in behind City Center instead of garden apartments. But I don't really have any control over it except to say that I don't really like it and I want you to do something different. And they're not listening to me. And I've been saying it for 1.5 years, but they're not listening to me. I would like to have some fee simple properties, new properties in District 2. We're built out. We have no land. We're going to get it's likely we're going to maybe get another affordable housing venture soon in the area. But I think it's just worth remembering that if a property owner has the right to build on it, he has that right, and there's nothing the CRA and the city can do to take it away. So that's just my little piece that I wanted to My 2 cents, if you will. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Fournier.
So in this case, if we approve this, the CRA will own this. So we do have some ability to say what we would target this for in the future. So that is there a way to ask the CRA to look into these assemblages and turning this neighborhood or targeting this neighborhood for single-family development? Since we do control what happens if we own this.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that depends on how much more the CRA can acquire so that it wouldn't be done piecemeal, and it could be done similar to Hunter's Manor where it's a true subdivision. As it stands right now, if you approve the purchase of this property, the 5 parcels we have aren't a true assembly that you could create a subdivision out of, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to stop speaking with other owners about acquiring their property as well. It's our one thing where we know as the CRA, if we have ownership, we can do the appropriate right-of-way dedications so that the city can budget for that capital improvement project to put roads and infrastructure out here that this neighborhood deserves.
Yeah, so just to add on that, the more land that we do own in this area, the more we control what happens to it. We don't have to meet any pro formas like the private sector. So there's, this is zone RM12. You can put multifamily there. We own RM12 properties behind the Senior Activity Center, and that all turned single family. So we have control over what this subdivision looks like. We were, recommended by the advisory that we start acquiring properties in this area to make a residential subdivision. So that's what we're doing. If they become available, we will buy them, we will maintain them. Like Cassie said earlier, this area is prone to tax deed auctions, and it just keeps turning over and dumping, and what we're trying to do is clean up the area and make it viable and livable.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I appreciate that the more we acquire, or the CRA acquires, the more control we have over the future of this area. And I think you're hearing from us that it would be great to try to, if we're going to do this, to try to do it in a way that it's ready for single-family homes if we can. Thank you.
Very good. Further commission discussion. Commissioner Perkins.
Yes, I think Commissioner Eden brought up a good point when she said that if you own the land, you can do whatever you want with it, which is a good point. It's common sense, and I think everybody knows that. So you can't purchase some land and somebody tell you what to do with it. We're all aware of that. But I'd like to suggest to you that some of these homes, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 homes in that area, whatever you plan to do with those CRA properties, would you make sure that you contact these homeowners to let them know what to expect or what's coming once that land is sold or whatever you plan to do with it? Just
Absolutely.
make sure those homeowners are informed as to what's coming up around them. Thank you.
I just want to make sure we're, and I'm just pointing my finger because you're standing there. You don't determine what we're going to do with this land. I mean, it's absolutely not. I mean, we are the determining factor here. And we are the ones who are going to say yes or no, we're going to purchase this one piece of property in this entire area today. That's what we're talking about. But eventually, this board, is who determines what we're going to do with this property. Whether we sell it to somebody who wants to develop a massive apartment building, or we want to just develop it into single-family homes ourselves, or we want to contract with somebody like a Kenny Davis, and I'm just using that name just because we have in the past, and have him build single-family homes, or any other builder who wants to participate. Once we, the CRA owns it, we then control what happens there. And yes, of course, it's a very good suggestion, Commissioner Perkins, that we absolutely communicate with residents what we plan to do once we determine what our plan is, which right now our plan, I think, is just to buy this piece of property to try and clean up the area. Yes, Vice Mayor?
I have a question. With the 5 other property owners, 5 other property owners or homes that are here?
There are 5 single-family homes there, 3 of which are homesteaded properties. one of which is a rental and one of which is vacant.
And I know you've been in contact with the owners. How likely and what do you think they are to ever sell to us, to be able to make an assemblage here?
So the owners that I've been in contact with are more the vacant lots, not the owner-occupied single-family homes. The consultant that is working on doing the legal sketches, legal descriptions for the right-of-way dedication, they will be the one reaching out to the homeowners to schedule their neighborhood meeting to explain about the plan for the development of public roads and infrastructure and the required right-of-way. So at that point in time, that's really going to be the first point of contact that every property owner in that area has.
Because my concern is, again, with this one being such an outlier from the one that we already own, is if we can't get the homeowners to want to sell to us ever, and we just want to make sure that the roads and septic are done, couldn't we just do an offer for the easements?
City right-of-way, we don't like to put in an easement. We want it to be a true right-of-way dedication, so it's publicly dedicated right-of-way for the road and the utilities that go there.
But could we put an offer in just for public right-of-way?
For our hope is, because the fact that especially these vacant lots, literally the building department will not issue permits, that they will see it as an opportunity for their lot to become buildable and want to willingly dedicate the right-of-way. For the existing single-family homes, our hope is the opportunity for them to have a paved road and be able to be on public water and sewer would be an incentive for them to be willing to dedicate the right-of-way as well.
But then there'd be less of an incentive to actually sell, or if they were to sell, they'd want to sell at a RM12 price tag.
They'll all want to sell at whatever the comps will support. I mean, real estate's real estate, as you know.
Right. Well, it's almost where I'm looking at this assemblage, and if we invested into purchasing the right-of-ways and made this area livable, where the public market, the private market could just come in and, like, the private market would then be interested in these vacant lots as well and build them without our interference.
My hope would be that we can get the entire lots, when we bring the right-of-way issue to their attention and explain to them at that public meeting, that neighborhood meeting, that you're not ever going to be able to get building permits unless you dedicate the right-of-way, that there might be an opportunity for the CRA to purchase some of the vacant lots. Obviously, I can't commit on behalf of what property owners will or won't do, but that's actually my hope, is that there'll be some acquisition opportunities that come out of this as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting acquisition. It's just, I don't know how much I feel about the likelihood of acquiring all that much more. That's it.
Yeah, I also just want to point out, I mean, because we have been pursuing these properties for some time, and part of the genesis of the CRA purchasing these properties is to improve the lot of those homeowners who live there. Because there has been public dumping going on. This has been, I mean, this small area is a blighted area all by itself, just because of the vacant properties that nobody has eyes on or nobody cares about. So the CRA, in essence, is cleaning up that area one lot at a time, and it's better off now than it was. So we're getting there, little by little. Further commission discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to motion to call the question.
Mayor?
That's-
Out of those 5 homes, I met with 4 of them, I think in January or February of this year. And I did ask the question, were they interested in selling? And they were not back in January or February, so I don't think they are now. Those homes that are there, I think, have been there for like 40 to 50 years or more. And, you know, they're not interested in selling. That's why I ask you to please contact them and let them know what's going on around them, because I don't want them to say the commissioner did not tell them. So, but if you contact them, I think at least if they know what's going on, they can better understand the situation around them. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Any further questions? Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Eaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
No.
Vice Chair McGee,
No.
Chair Harden.
Yes. Item number 6 is a resolution.
A resolution of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the proper officials to execute a lease agreement between the CRA and Sonata Apartments Limited relating to property located at 100 Northwest 8th Street, Suite 102, Pompano Beach, providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for discussion. Once again,
Good afternoon, Cassandra Lemasurier, Real Property Manager. Staff is seeking approval of a lease between the CRA and Sonata Apartments LTD for the 3,180 square foot commercial space that's located at 100 Northwest 8th Street, Suite 102. On May 18th, 2021, the CRA board approved a development agreement with Sonata Apartments LTD for the Sonata Apartments project, which is a 121-unit mixed-use, mixed-income residential project. The building that you see outlined in red on the aerial above is what is known as Building 1, and it is the multi-story building that has the commercial square footage on the ground floor as well as their leasing office. The two buildings on the north side of Northwest 8th Street are the other two buildings in that are the three-story, more low-scale residential units. So the development agreement requires that Sonata lease the CRA this 3,108 square foot retail space in the project for $10 per square foot for a period of 10 years, and also construct and install up to $150,000 in tenant improvements. Now, on the CRA side, the development agreement required that the CRA reimburse the developer up to $420,000 for the relocation of the dry retention area that was on the eastern portion of the property where Building 1's located, further west, and use a storm tech drainage system. It also had the CRA contributing $1.5 million towards the public infrastructure. You also saw that in the budget presentation that Kim just did, where we're paying the $300,000 per year until we hit the 1.5. And the CRA intends to sublease those premises, and the sublease will be presented to the board for approval after the required legal advertisement, providing notice of the CRA's intent to enter into a sublease. It's also important to note that while our cost is $10 per square foot, that's extremely under the market value, and it's because of all of the funds that the CRA contributed to make this project a reality. In addition, the CRA also leased their property that abuts the west side of Dixie Highway, where a portion of that building is located as well. So it really was a collaborative effort between both the city and the CRA. It was a tri-party development agreement to be able to make this project come to fruition. So we're very excited about having this new commercial space that we would be able to then rent out for a market rate that would exceed the $10 per square foot, so that we would be generating lease revenue beyond our expenses for the rent.
very good. Thank you for that. This is a public hearing. Is there any input from the public? Seeing none, public input closed. Commission discussion, questions? I've got one.
Yes.
Why wasn't this included in the development agreement? Why are we doing this now?
The lease was in the development agreement, but we didn't have the actual lease form with all of the terms. We had to make sure, because we knew they weren't in for permitting yet, they had an approved site plan, that there might be changes to the square footage and the actual design that would set the rent rate, and that is actually what happened. Originally, the commercial square footage was going to be about 350 square feet larger, but when they actually got into permitting and design, they had to do some reconfiguration to address building requirements, and that actually reduced that commercial square footage. So we thought it would be premature to bring you a lease until they were far enough along in the construction plans that we knew that the square footage and the rent rate were not going to be subject to change.
Okay, I mean, but it just seems, well, supposing we said no right now. I mean, we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot, I understand that, but I mean, I don't understand why it wasn't just done at the time of the development agreement, and it was an agreement that, okay, at such time that space is available, it's leased, but regardless, that's all. Commission discussion. Commissioner Perkins?
What do we plan to do with the retail space?
We actually have someone that's interested in using it as office space that we've been negotiating with. We have a meeting that's scheduled with them on Wednesday, so that we can get a firm commitment from them on their intent. If not, we do have other interested parties, and if need be, the CRA could always issue a request for proposal for the lease of the space.
So when you say office space, you mean a business want to put an office
Yes.
in the retail space?
Yes, the way that it's set, it could be retail, it could be office. It's the property zone B3, so anything that's allowed by the B3 zoning could go into that space. But the intended subtenant, it would be an office use.
Okay, thank you.
Further commission discussion? Commissioner Fournier?
Why doesn't the subtenant just lease it themselves? I don't understand why we get in the middle of these leases and take on the risk that it could stay vacant. I mean, that has happened in the past, I assume. So we are taking on some financial risk. I understand it's below market, but why are we renting this, especially if there's interested parties? Why don't we let them market transaction?
This was a commitment that the developer made to the CRA for our willingness to be able to help financially support that project so that it could come to fruition. And for us, the ability to be able to have that space for $10 per square foot plus the tenant improvement money of $150,000 that came with it, we knew that when we rented it out for market rate that we would be covering our lease cost in the sublease. And it also gives us an opportunity that when we rent this out, you know, our hope is that perhaps we could have an African-American owned business that's going into this spot, similar to what we've tried to do with the 731 MLK building.
So I understand this was designed to benefit us. I just don't really see it, I guess. And is the intended tenant the tenant in the drawings?
Yes, if you're seeing in your in the lease itself, one of the exhibits shows a floor plan.
Okay.
And that would be the intended subtenant, but we do not have the commitment yet from this at this point in time, so that's why I didn't want to put that out there that they are in fact the subtenant.
Okay, and then in the lease, the renewal appeared to be in 10 years, and it was only at the discretion of the CRA director. Is that standard in our leases to take that power away from this body and to give it to the executive director of the CRA?
We have gone to the point where for many of our lease renewals, especially if it's a renewal option contained in the original lease, that we give the CRA executive director that function because the lease terms have already been presented to you and it's just an extension under the existing lease terms. So it's considered more of an administrative function as long as we put forward all of that information and none of the terms are changing and the CRA executive director doesn't have the ability to change the terms, only extend the duration of the lease.
Okay, it strikes me that in 10 years, a lot could change with this body and everything, and perhaps that it's not that much to come back for the extensions, but thank you.
I've got Vice Mayor McGee, then Commissioner Moss.
What is the market showing right now for square footage, market rate?
Market rate square footage, there's a big range. If you go look at Koi and Envy that's on Atlantic, that mixed-use project, they're trying to rent their space for $46 per square foot. But we also know how long it's set vacant. For a new commercial space that includes tenant improvements like this, you could see, depending on the square footage, because obviously a smaller square footage lends itself to less uses, you probably could see a range of anywhere from $15 to $30 per square foot, depending on the rent type or the lease type. Obviously, you know, what expenses are covered by the landlord versus what expenses the tenant has to bear.
And so what are we asking per square foot?
Our lease rate that we're asking for is $15 per square foot. There will still be a little bit of finish work that the intended subtenant would have to do, but we feel that that is more than fair as far as representative of a lease rate for a property of this nature.
Okay, seems a tad low, but at least it's in the black. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Moss.
Vice Mayor asked my question.
Very good. Further commission questions, concerns? And Commissioner Perkins.
I would love to see this retail space doing something that would accommodate the community, something for our youth or something for like a resource center or something of that sort that could really help the community in that surrounding area. But I don't have a problem with the retail space.
The intended subtenant is actually a nonprofit that provides youth services. So while their primary function would be an office, they also anticipate that they would provide youth services out of the location as well.
Great, okay, thank you.
Very good. Further questions, concerns? Seeing none, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Eaton,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier,
No.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Vice Chair McGee,
Yes.
Chair Hart.
Yes, item 7 is a resolution. Your microphone?
Sorry about that. A resolution of the Pompano Beach Community Redevelopment Agency appointing a general contractor, developer, real estate professional, appraiser, or related field to the Northwest District Advisory Committee of the CRA for a term of 2 years, said term to expire on July 17, 2025, providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second for discussion. I'll go ahead and nominate the only applicant, Carrie Ann Worley. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, nominations closed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Takes us up to reports. Mr. Tran.
Yes, Chairman. I'd like to bring up Sarah Mulder. I have one update for you, so it's very positive.
Good afternoon, Sarah Mulder, Project Manager. We do have some good news. We received notice last week that our Cultural Facilities Grant application for McNabb was funded. So we will be receiving $500,000 for the construction of the Botanical Gardens and the classroom facility portion of the McNabb House and Botanical Gardens project.
Very good. Yeah. Nice work.
That concludes my report, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you for that. Great report. Ms. McKinnon.
I have no report.
Very good. Let's see. Our next meeting date, September 19th, 2023. That'll be our next CRA meeting. That takes us up to CRA board members. Commissioner Eaton.
No report, thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Fournier.
Thank you, Mayor. Congrats on the grant. That's great news. The conversation here about the garage reminded me of something I've heard from a few residents about the signage on our garage, that it's perhaps not adequate enough. They send me pictures of the garage in Hollywood, and it says parking very clearly on it, and our garage is so beautiful that it almost doesn't look like a garage. So as we think about even potentially renaming it or anything else down there, I think we should take a look at the signage and being really clear that it says parking when you're on A1A. And then lastly, in the budget, there was, in the Northwest CRA, it alluded to the county funding $10 million for residential improvements from 2022 to 2025 in the Northwest District. I know that funding is possessed and controlled and dispersed by the county, but I think it would be great as this board to get an update on that funding. And I know there was one pilot project that received funding. I'd love to hear how that went and if they plan to submit for more funding. I just think as this board, we should keep our pulse on what is going on with that $10 million to ensure that it is benefiting the residents of our city. So I'd love a report on that.
Mr. Tran, you can get that information, can't you?
Yes, I have that written down.
Very good. So you can get it to all of us, please.
Thank you.
So that's it. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moss.
Just a reminder to the residents of Palm Cypress Bend that we're having a town hall meeting on Wednesday, the 26th, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Skolnick Center about crime in the two communities, Palm and Cypress Bend. I'd like to encourage everyone to be there. Our police captain and police major will be there, as well as some city representatives.
Very good. Thank you for that, sir. Commissioner Perkins.
Just one item. I probably should wait to the next meeting, commissioner meeting, but I can't. And I've been bringing up the fact in the area where I live, the homes were built in 1952. And every time there's a thunderstorm, we have no electricity. And I've been asking for staff to try to get someone from FP&L out before hurricane season, because it's here now, but see what can be done about cutting some of the trees back. Yesterday, we were without power for 6 hours. It affected 151 homes. Normally it's 130, but yesterday it was 151. I left the ribbon cutting this morning, and I came home again, and the electric is out again. So I don't know what to expect when I get home now. But there needs to be just something done with FP&L as far as trimming and cutting some of those trees back in the Sanders Park area to prevent some of the outages. Electricity went out last night about 6, and it came back on this morning about 12:35, 12:38. So if we can get staff on top of that to see what we can do at FP&L to try to trim back some of these trees before we have, so that we won't have to have this problem again. Thank you. That's it.
Very good. Commissioner, do you have the number for our FPL representative?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Greg Harrison was very helpful last night. He was texting back and forth. Of course, the whole community is calling me along with FP&L. But yeah, I do have the number, and there's just nothing they can do. I mean, if the tree comes down on the limb and it goes down, the lights go out. So it's just a lot of that. I can ride by and see some of the trees covering the wires in the area. So I just need FP&L to just come in, ride through, and see if they can cut some of the trees back before the problem happens again.
Very good. Okay. Vice Mayor McGee.
I'm glad Commissioner Fournier brought that up. I've spoken to city management, CRA, and parking about the fact that our garage is so beautiful that people don't know it's a garage. And we'll circle it multiple times before they call me and they say, "Where's the garage?" And then I tell them where it is. And I'm like, "Oh, we passed it." So yes, definitely need to do signage, especially on the west side, because from A1A, you don't know it's a garage. Additionally, I want to say it was a beautiful ribbon cutting and check presentation this morning at the Senior Center in District 4, and presentation of check to MPO to help get our railway crossings done. So that was very exciting and lovely. Warm, but super nice, and the facility is beautiful and now open to the public. And then I also just wanted to let everyone know that the sinking of our scuba robot, the Meccan H2O, went off beautifully Wednesday. He is now at home on the bow of the Lady Luck. And it was very cool, and big thanks, shout out to everyone involved with it, Shipwreck Park, South Florida Diving Headquarters, all the divers that came out and helped get it into place. It was, and the Public Art for coordinating, and we had, I think, 3 or 4 members from Public Art come ride along too to see it done. And it was just very cool. So I know there's gonna be a bunch of video being edited and released in the near future, so we'll keep the update on that. That's it.
Very good, thank you for that. I just really got one item, and that's has to do with the city. I'm just to remind everyone, please, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., our budget workshop starts right here, 9 a.m. That's all I've got. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.